Hey there, and welcome back to the Beginner's Garden Podcast. I'm so excited about what we're going to be talking about today. And I know that sounds really strange because we're talking about snakes, and specifically snakes in our gardens. If we've been gardening any length of time, we have probably encountered a snake or two in our gardens. And most of the time we think about, is this a good snake or is this a bad snake? And regardless of how you feel about snakes, I think you're going to learn a lot today. I have invited my friend Johnny Sain to the podcast. He and I have known each other for a really long time. And what has fascinated me about him is how in tune he is with wildlife and with snakes in particular. He's also an avid gardener. A few things that he'll talk with us about today is how to protect ourselves and be careful when we're in the garden, how to look at snakes a little bit differently. Maybe it's not a matter of good versus bad, and just some general safe practices. I have already been putting into practice some of the things that he shared with me in my own garden this year. And I hope that you will not only enjoy this conversation, but you will leave more educated and informed, maybe a little bit less scared, and more appreciative, potentially, if you have snakes in your garden. Enjoy this conversation with my friend Johnny. Johnny, we have known each other probably 2 decades, I would say.
Yeah, a long time.
You first sold me an insurance policy before my almost 19-year-old was born. And from what I recall about you, I don't remember hearing a whole lot about your love for wildlife and nature. And as we're going to talk about today, snakes. Has this always been something that you've been interested in?
Yes. Ever since I was very young, my earliest memories are of being enthralled with animals, all animals. I really had a thing for dinosaurs. And I think that's what helped me develop an affinity for reptiles. I also had a grandpa that I didn't have him very long. He passed away when I was 7, but he had a ritual. I rode the school bus to his and my grandmother's house when I was in first, second, all through elementary school. He had a ritual that seemed like every day he met me at the bus with something in a jar. And it might be an insect or it might be a frog or something, and a lizard or something. And one day he met me with a snake, and he showed me how to hold it, which he was a 70-something-year-old man born in 1903. So that generation, and he's, a farmer, a rural person, that was, I didn't realize how unique that perspective was coming from that culture until I got much older. But anyway, he showed me how to hold it. He told me not to talk about it with my grandma because she was furious about it. She told him not to show me the snake, not to teach me how to catch him. She wanted him to take it out in the woods and kill it. But I remember how he held it in his hands, how he held it really gently and taught me how to do it, taught me how not to get bit. It was a non-venomous snake. Thinking back, I think it was an earth snake, but I'm not positive. That was a long time ago. But anyway, yeah, I've always been interested in those things and always wanted to catch them. I always wanted to look at them up close. Yeah. Even then, when I was selling you insurance,
yes.
When I was going home, I was in my 30s then. I was probably still watching lizards and snakes at my house.
You're also a gardener.
Yes.
And that's something that I enjoy seeing you on Facebook, and you've already got your tomatoes a little bit sooner than mine this year, but I was happy for that. And I don't know that this is a topic that we've never talked about before, but gardening and snakes go hand in hand to some degree. It doesn't always have to. And if someone has just a raised bed garden right outside their house, maybe not so much. But for a lot of gardeners, snakes are going to be part of it. So what do you think that gardeners need to know about snakes? And the reason I ask this is because you see on social media, just like I do, especially in the spring and in the summer, what do I do? Is this a good snake? Is this a bad snake? And that's a good question if they're even asking that, because a lot of people are like, every snake's a bad snake. What do you want gardeners to know about snakes as it pertains to their own gardens and their own yards?
First off, if you're seeing snakes in your garden, that means you're doing things right. That means that at least there are parts of an intact ecosystem going on there, because the snake's not around there unless he can find food and cover. So I count that as a win in my book. That's what I'm aiming for. My gardening style is chaotic. I have raised beds, but they are very, very, very hillbilly. And, I'm behind on weeding right now. Of course, probably everyone is.
Yeah.
The rain is bad, but, we have a garden shed next door. We have lizards in the garden and lots of snakes like to eat lizards. And so finding them around the place is pretty common. As far as good snakes versus bad snakes, they're really all good. Some of them can hurt you. I've had several conversations about venomous snakes versus non-venomous snakes and good versus bad and all that. Every snake you encounter, if it's acting defensive or it tries to bite or it tries to get away, it's terrified. They're not angry. They're not trying to protect their turf. They're terrified. They have no legs. They have no arms. They are small, very small compared to you, even the big ones. I think that one of the longest snakes around here is a black rat snake, and they can get up like 6 feet, something like that. But they don't weigh very much. They're snakes. And so they view you as a threat. The bad, quote unquote, bad snakes people are talking about are venomous snakes. I don't run into them very often. And even I spend a lot of time in wilder areas than my yard. Their entire livelihood is dependent on the venom. The last thing they want to do is bite a bigger animal that could potentially hurt them and inject their venom, because it's going to take a while to build that venom back up. And that means they're defenseless and they can't eat. And so that's the last thing they want to do. Snake bites typically occur or always occur because the snake doesn't feel like it has another option. It's again, terrified. So that's what it does. But they're not good or bad. They just are. Some can hurt you. You need to be aware that they could be around. And I'm covering lots of topics here, but most bites, actually, I think most bites happen because people are messing with them.
Really?
Most of them, I think, and I haven't looked at the statistics in a while, but I believe most bites happen with young men who are intoxicated or trying to show off. And I've been there. I've done some dumb things with venomous snakes, but thankfully I made it. Now I'm 54 years old, so I think I'm past that. But anyway, that's how most of them happen. The other ones happen because, it's just an accident. You put your foot in the wrong place or your hand in the wrong place. When I'm out, I try to be really aware all the time of where my hands and feet are. And when you lose track of that is usually when an accident will happen. I spend a lot of time, I take that back when I said I don't encounter venomous snakes very often in the wild. That's not true. It depends on where I'm at. If I'm in the creeks and I do a lot of wade fishing, I run into the venomous snakes all the time, cottonmouths, who have a horrible reputation as being aggressive and, wanting to bite you and run you off a creek and all that stuff, which is not, I've been way more scared of a beaver than I have of a cottonmouth. I've never had a cottonmouth act aggressive to me. I've had them swim right up to my foot. I've had them swim between my legs. Never. The only time they've shown like they were frightened and might do something is when I've approached them knowing they were there and, wanted to see what they would do, which again, I don't recommend.
One thing I wanted to ask you when you were saying about how they don't really want to attack you, I think I would assume that stance is something that you have learned by observation. And that's one thing that I've seen. You're always posting videos of snakes that you encounter when you're in the creek or you're nearby. And I'm wondering, what have you learned? I mean, there's one thing to read about snakes and even grow up where we're at in a rural area. But from what I've seen, you've intentionally observed the behaviors of snakes because they've been so intriguing to you. So what do you think that you could share as someone who's just sat there and watched them and maybe goaded them to some degree to learn their behavior that would help those of us who aren't willing to do that?
I think the first step is to just acknowledge that they're just animals. I think they've been given mythic status and portrayed as monsters lots of times, and they're not. They're just animals. If that's your perspective, then it's easy to understand, that this is why they're behaving this way. That's the fear. I don't know if I arrived at that, in my own thought or I'd read it somewhere. But when you understand that they're animals and they react like other animals do to people, that know that people can hurt them, they try to get away. That's their first defensive. Sometimes they freeze. Some of them just try to hide. which is, again, typical of other animals. When you first encounter them, a rabbit, deer, all kinds of animals, they'll just freeze and hope you don't see them. The next thing they want to do is get away. The only time they bite or try to bite is when they're cornered and they don't feel like they have another option. And so, yeah, that did come from my observations. I noticed growing up catching snakes and never been bitten. Okay. By venomous or non-venomous, which is crazy.
Yeah,
but
you've had a lot of shots on goal with that.
I don't catch them anymore, but when I've caught a lot and I've never been bitten, and I don't know how to explain that. But anyway, yeah, observing how they react. The closer I get, you can read their body language. The more tense they get, you can see them coil up and get ready. In a position where they could strike. A few of the non-venomous snakes are aggressive biters. The rat snakes are. They seem to want to bite pretty quick into the encounter, but they're big snakes. And I think I don't know how that plays into it, but they're a little more, I won't say aggressive, but defensive than some of the smaller ones. But you can, again, just watch their body language. It's very similar to other animals, probably similar to how you react too. When you're in an uncomfortable situation, lots of times you don't want to be seen. Yeah. The next step is to just get out of this situation. How do I leave? And then the third one, when you're in a position where you don't have a choice, you may have to defend yourself. It may be, for humans it's verbally or whatever, but a lot of the same subtle tells that people have, snakes do too. Now, I've spent a lot of time around them, so I recognize them, but they're not that hard to recognize. You can tell when a snake's, laid out and they're not moving or moving very slowly, that they're comfortable. When they start to coil up and their head comes and they're looking directly at you, they know you're there and they're aware of the threat. A lot of the non-venomous snakes shake their tail like a rattlesnake. And when it's going against dead leaves, it sounds very much like a rattle. You know that then the next move, if you reach for them or get too close, is you're probably going to get bit. But it's just observation. And it's almost like I won't say an empathy, but a realization again that we're really not that different,
When I think about walking through my garden, and especially when we've had a lot of rain and the grass is high, and just doing this last night, what I try to be careful with is I don't want to accidentally come up on one. Like the whole term snakes in the grass is there probably for a reason. Would you say that most snakes are more aware of us before we're aware of them?
Absolutely.
So what does that mean as far as how we behave in a garden setting?
It's kind of like I got to go out to Yellowstone and trout fish a few summers ago, and we went to an area that we thought might have grizzly bears. We walked through the area going, hey, bear, we're here, and making noise, making sure we didn't surprise the bear. Yeah. I think if you do the same thing going into tall grass or in areas that you're not, there might be a snake, make your presence even more well known. That snakes don't have ears, but they pick up vibrations from the ground. And so if you walk heavy, they're gonna feel it. They may leave before you even get close. You've probably spooked a lot of snakes that you never knew were there. But if you make a point to walk heavier, if you can part the grass, move the grass, something like that, where you can see, of course, do that. But yeah, I think a lot of them know that people are there before the people do. I think everyone would be shocked if you spend time particularly in wilder areas, but even in gardens, how many animals you don't notice because they don't want you to notice them.
But they see you.
They see you.
Yeah.
They know you. They know you're there.
That's a little unsettling.
It is kind of, but it actually speaks to, we could go into a whole philosophical conversation about observation and being in the moment and really paying attention. But, most people don't. I'm guilty of that too. You get in your mind, you got some things you want to get done. You want to weed or you want to go out there. My time now is trimming tomato plants because fungus. So I got that in my brain. I'm going out there with this goal and I've got work to do back in the house. I can't spend a lot of time out here. So maybe I'm in a little bit of a hurry and I'm not paying close attention. I don't know how many times I've been out in the garden doing that and looked up and there's a lizard watching me from, 4 feet away, sitting right on top of a fence post, big as Dallas. All I have to do is look.
Yeah.
And it's been watching me ever since I've been out there. So I think that happens a lot. But yeah, if you're going into areas that you think there might be one, make your presence even more well known. They probably already know you're there, but let them know, yeah, I'm coming this way. I'm coming here right now. In that same vein, watch where you put your feet. I think I've only stepped on 2 or 3 snakes in my entire life. And one of them was at night. Another tip, if you go out to the garden at night in the summer, take a flashlight.
Okay.
A lot of snakes are active at night, especially the venomous snakes.
Really?
Yes. In where we are in Arkansas, all the venomous snakes we'll encounter are pit vipers. And they're called pit vipers because they have a heat sensing organ in their head. And it's the pit. And that's how they locate their food. Lots of it's warm-blooded. They look for mice, rats, rabbits, squirrels, stuff like that. And a lot of their hunting is at night. Where we live, it's wooded, it's rural. I don't walk outside at night without a flashlight. I don't want to step on a copperhead.
Boots?
Most boots, if you can't take the light, don't go out in flip-flops without a light.
Yeah.
If you must go out without a light, then definitely wear boots. I would recommend just taking a light,
Okay.
Yeah.
So are they going to see that light and scamper away?
They might freeze. The big thing is you can see them.
Okay.
And again, watch very closely where you're stepping. But again, haven't checked statistics, but I would bet that a lot of snake bites happen at night in the summer because that's when they're out roaming. That's when they're looking for what they eat. And again, in that vein, I hate to attach an economic benefit to an animal because I think they have an intrinsic value, but at the same time, venomous snakes and a lot of non-venomous snakes eat mice and rats. And they do a lot of good for us in that regard as far as directly lowering the rodent population. But those rodents carry a lot of ticks. Mm-hmm. They're like something that can help with Lyme disease and other tick-borne diseases because they consume the carriers of those disease and the ticks.
I assume they eat voles as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
They'll eat anything. Most snakes, some of the smaller ones, like a DeKay's brown snake and the little green snakes and the garter snakes, they eat mostly insects and small frogs, small vertebrates, slugs. But the bigger snakes are rat snakes, king snakes, all the venomous snakes. Yeah, they'll eat anything they can overpower, pretty much.
So is it true that the larger snakes that most of us consider good snakes eat venomous snakes? Or is that overblown?
King snakes do. And king snakes actively hunt. They actively hunt for venomous snakes. Around here we have a prairie king snake and a speckled king snake. The rat snakes, I have read, will eat venomous snakes, but it's not like that's their specialty. Mm. There are there's two others, a coach whip and a blue racer. I think if they encountered, and I'm not an expert, I'm just speaking off what I've read and speaking with other experts. If they encounter a smaller venomous snake that they can overpower, they'll eat it. Okay. But the king snakes definitely do. Yeah. That's kind of their thing.
In my garden, I've encountered more of the black snake garden. Is there such thing as a garden snake, or is that is that garter?
They're garter. There's a garter snake and a ribbon snake, which look very similar. And then the black snakes are what a lot of people encounter. Those are rat snakes.
Okay. So that's mostly what I've encountered in my garden, in my yard. But there was one morning in 2020, and I remember because my husband was working at home during COVID, and I was out picking my Roma tomatoes from my raised bed. And most of the time I'm careful where I'm putting my hands. You mentioned your feet, but most of the time, especially in raised beds, I'm careful where I'm putting my hands. But for some reason, I didn't really pay much attention because I'm like, it's a raised bed. Most of the time I see snakes, they're on the ground or up a tree or messing with my chickens or something. But in the corner of my eye, I noticed a movement in the corner of the raised bed. And I looked, and there was I think my husband said eventually was a baby copperhead. It was a copperhead for sure. And my heart went into my throat, and I called my husband from out in the garden because I don't deal with snakes in my house typically. So I called him. He came out there, and of course he dealt with it. But even now, when I think about that encounter, my gut clenches because I was so full of fear in that moment because he could have gotten me on my hand when I was picking my tomatoes. So when you said a while back that all snakes are good snakes, tell me why that copperhead was a good snake in my garden.
Well, again, if you want to attach an economic value to it, it would be he's keeping rodents out or eating rodents that are there. Other than that, his intrinsic value is that he's part of an ecosystem. And I know I know if you've read any of the stuff I've written, I write a lot about Aldo Leopold,
Yeah.
who was a pioneer of wildlife management. I don't even really like using that term, but anyway, he wrote about that. He wrote about the community. An ecosystem is a community, and humans can be part of that community too. We are. It's not that we can be. We absolutely are if we live in it. But communities they're dependent. Organisms are dependent on one another, and even if you don't necessarily understand the intricate details of how one organism that might be deemed bad, that doesn't mean that it is. It just means it is for your particular, from this particular perspective. Yeah, it can hurt you. But they play a role, and not only, again, as predators, but as prey. Raptors, birds of prey, eat snakes. King snakes eat snakes. Other animals do too. And so, again, from that point of view, as part of the ecosystem, they have value. And that's how I do view all animals, all wild animals. And so, again, I think it's a question of perspective. Do I want a copperhead in my garden? No. If I find a copperhead in my garden, I'm going to relocate it. Okay. I'm going to catch it. I'm going to take it somewhere else, which is not ideal. Again, not knowing all the details on this, but a lot of reptiles have very small home ranges, and they just don't do well once you move them out. They lose track of where everything is: food, water, escape cover, all that stuff. Box turtles are a good example. They have like a 1 mile or less home range. So if you move them, they may not survive. And I don't know all the specifics for different snake species, but that's not ideal. But at the same time, I don't want a copperhead in my garden. My grandkids go out there. Yeah. I go out there. My wife goes out there. Dogs go out there. Accidents happen. So if I find one, I'm moving it. But I don't think of it as the villain.
Yeah.
It's just trying to live. I mean, it's just the same as I am, and I provided, by accident or by design, whatever, a place that it found everything it needed, so that's where it's at. Yeah. You and I were talking before we started the podcast about me finding a rat snake in a chicken coop.
Yeah.
And eating eggs.
Let's talk about that, because that's something that people have told me about. Yeah. But I'd never experienced it.
Yeah.
What do you do?
I'd never experienced it either until just like 2 weeks ago. And we are actively working to make the property we live on, to make it wildlife habitat. I mean, we have native flowers, native wildflowers everywhere except in the garden. And we don't mow. We have one little patch that we mow, but most of it we don't. Most of the land we live on is wooded. Mm-hmm. And so it doesn't require a lot of maintenance anyway. And that was one of the reasons we chose it.
Yeah.
But anyway, part of that, is when you invite wildlife onto your place, they're going to be there. Yeah. So
can't be selective.
Yeah. They're all going to be there. And to me, I love it. I mean, I don't mind. That's where I was going with it. I don't mind at all if the black snake needs 2 eggs for a tax. It is probably eating some mice that would get in the chicken feed or try to, or get into other places, but just that it's there. I dig it. And it was a little shocking when I opened to get the eggs out, and there was one, he had 3 in him already and had the 4th one in his mouth. Yeah. And it was a priceless look on his face. But anyway, I took a picture with my camera, and then I grabbed him by the tail, and he let go of the last egg, and he was not happy. He actually coiled up on me like he was wanting to bite, but I let him calm down and then touched him on the tail again, and he left slowly because he was full of eggs. And then I caught him out there about 3 days later, and he had 1 egg already down. And I told him, I said, "We can't do this, man. You gotta go." So he left. I got eggs early today, but I expect it to be back. It knows where food is. So, what are my options here? Well, I can go out early and get the eggs. Our hens in the summer are usually done by 11, so I'll go out early and get the eggs. But I don't mind. It's like I don't mind if a deer, gets a little bit off my vegetable garden every now and then. I don't want it going there and mowing down everything, but yeah, I like having deer in the yard. I like having the snakes in the yard. And we were talking before, I don't know if there's a way to snake-proof a chicken coop. I mean...
So relocating it wouldn't make a difference because it would just find its way back?
And that's too much of a headache for me. I'm not going to relocate. I'm not going to do that. I will try to stay vigilant, get the eggs early. And this is going to be done by October.
Yeah. Well, and you just kind of wonder too, if you're beating the snake consistently, maybe it'll go somewhere else.
It might. I'm thinking I really need to study more on this, but I think they have like a circuit. I think they move probably in a territory. They have a place they come around through probably every 2 or 3 days, and that's okay. Kind of seems like what's happening with the chicken coop. The snake is making a round, and it's hitting our chicken coop probably every 3 or 4 days, and so maybe keep track on that. I'm a little bit of a citizen scientist, so I may start keeping a log and see how that works, and then I can prepare even more, for when the snake's coming. And get out, make sure I'm out there early on those days.
Yeah.
But to me, again, that's part of it. That's part of living rural. That's part of having chickens. Mm-hmm. I like having the wildlife on our property, so I'm okay with giving up an egg or two. And again, I thought it was kind of Robin Hoodish. I mean, you come in, and that's pretty. And I've twice caught him, and he didn't care. He's defiant. Looked me in the eye. Yeah, so what of it? I'm going to eat an egg.
Just taking a quick break from my conversation with Johnny to thank our sponsor, Organic Rev. If you are gardening in raised beds, you know how quickly that soil can get tired by mid to late summer, especially as we head into the later part of July and the first part of August. That is when I lean even more on Organic Rev to help keep my garden going and help keep my plants healthy. Rev helps to recharge my raised bed soil, my container soil, even my in-ground soil by boosting microbial activity, improving moisture retention, and unlocking nutrients that plants need, right when they're starting to run low at this point in the season. I just mix 1 ounce of Rev to a gallon of water. This stuff a little bit goes a long way, and I water my plants when it's time to do a deep soaking. Also, as I get ready to plant my fall garden plants, I dip the root ball of a transplant into a 50-50 Rev to water mixture to get those plants started off right. Whether you're dealing with high heat and stressed plants or you're getting ready to plant in the next season, make sure you have a bottle of organic Rev on hand so that you can use it to help boost your garden. You can go to organicrev.com and use my promo code JILL10 to get 10% off of your order. Your garden and your harvest will thank you. All right, let's get back to my conversation with Johnny.
What about identifying snakes? Because I think that's the one thing that all of us want to know, and I do too. If I see one, like, what is it? Is that overblown? Do you think it's really not even necessary for people? Like, a snake's a snake, not a big deal. Or is there a way that people can learn to identify what they have? And is there a benefit to that?
I think there's a benefit to it. I think there are several benefits to it. Number one, it's going to stop you from overreacting. Number two, I think just having that knowledge is a good thing. You're going to know more about your world, about where you live, your place. So I think that's a good thing. I don't think it's super difficult, but you have to be earnest about learning the distinctions. There are some tropes out there, about how you can identify a snake. Well, it has elliptical pupils, which all the pit vipers do because they're nocturnal. But you only notice it when it's bright light shining in their eyes, Okay. Head shape, that's not necessarily accurate. It's a relative. There are lots of non-venomous water snakes that have a very triangular shaped head. Probably the most, in our region, the best tell is that I believe all the pit vipers have hooded eyes, which makes them look mean. They have you can't see their eyes looking directly down their head. Not that you want to get that close.
Gotcha.
But they have hoods over their eyes. And all of the pit vipers in our area are relatively stocky. They have a thick build, cottonmouths in particular. But all of them have a thicker build to me to my eye than the non-venomous. You can talk about colors and patterns and all that. There's a lot of variables there. But one option right now, for all of its faults, social media there's lots of avenues there to learn it. I'm part of an Arkansas snake identification group, and people will post photos on there all the time and say, what is this? And then people they say not to guess on it. They have experts. They have expert herpetologists on there to correctly identify, but people test their knowledge. And so, you're going to get eyeballs on more snakes there than you will probably in a lifetime. In a year, definitely in a month, you'll see more snakes there than you'd see in your life. So I would use those resources. If you encounter a snake and you're not sure, the best advice is just leave it alone. Mm-hmm. Actually, the best advice always is to leave it alone.
Yeah.
Just let it be if you can. If it's in a place that, you're okay with the snake, then let it be. If you're not sure, you can consult. If you won't have time, maybe in the moment, pull up your phone while you're looking at the snake. But if you can, do that, try to ID it. You can also, and I don't know exactly, there used to be one, I think that was pretty local here, and they're in different areas of the country and the state. There are relocators that will come out and catch a snake for you. You don't even have to properly identify it. Just say you've got a snake on your property, it's in your shed, it's in your garden, and they'll come out and relocate it for you.
Have you ever, you probably don't have to do this because you could identify them by sight, but have you ever tested ChatGPT on this?
I have not.
Okay, so I'll tell you briefly. There was a small snake that was near my garage, and my husband feels the same way I do. We're not going to kill a snake unless we know what it is. And I know you wouldn't kill any of them, but if it's venomous so far, that's been different so far. But after my conversation with you, we may change our tone on that. But all that to say, I took a picture and I uploaded it to ChatGPT and I said, what is this? And because I wasn't quite sure if it was something like a cottonmouth, I wasn't able to determine, like, with my basic untrained knowledge. But it told me what it was, and I can't remember what it was, but it was something that wasn't venomous. But then I followed up and I said, well, could it be this? And I think I asked if it was a cottonmouth, and it said, most likely, no, it's not, and it gave me the reasons why it wasn't.
Oh, wow.
And then it also said something about its habitat, like where was it located?
Mm-hmm.
And I told it, I saw it, I can't remember, by the house or whatever. And it said it was a juvenile. And they said this was a juvenile of this, and it's usually hanging around this area. And it all matched. And I was like, well, that was easy.
Wow.
And I just wonder if you've tested it to see, because I know AI probably makes mistakes, but it seemed to be like pretty spot on as far as this is why it's not a cottonmouth.
I think that's a great idea. And that's one that I hadn't considered. And, people make mistakes too. So, I mean, that's definitely something I would try.
Well, and the benefit too of that one is that it was spooked of me and it just froze. Is that normal?
Yep.
And so while it was frozen, I looked at ChatGPT and then we took the shovel and I took it out to the woods right beside our house and let it go on its merry way. But that's something I've been able to do later is be okay knowing I can scoop it with a shovel and relocate it.
That's a normal thing though. I mean, there's science that says that the fear of snakes is both learned and innate. I'm sure, in our memories long, long ago, that form was a signal that there's danger. I think I've read that infants pick up on, can see snakes. They notice them quickly. Yeah. But it's also, part of our culture, as are a lot of wild animals that have teeth and that can bite us.
Yeah.
That they're bad, that we need to fear them. And snakes in this area, I have friends that live out in Montana and wilder places, and they have grizzlies and, mountain lions and all that stuff. And I tell them, we don't have any of that, but we have a lot of venomous snakes. And they acquire the same, again, kind of mythological standing. People, hear about snakes chasing people, and you hear about snakes, cottonmouths in particular, again, running people off of a creek bank because they wanted it was their territory. That's
Is that not true?
No.
My daughter went to a church camp last week and somebody claimed that the cottonmouth was chasing them and they got out of the water.
Cottonmouths, again, and I said erroneously earlier that I don't encounter many venomous snakes, but I have seen I've never gone to the creek, I don't think, and not seen a cottonmouth. And usually in close quarters, I've never had one try to chase me. If they're coming toward me, it's just because I'm between them and where they want to be. Again, the only time they've acted defensive is when I approach them. They've never come up and just displayed or tried to bite. I've actually poked them with sticks, never struck. Think about them. Again, they're afraid. They're terrified. If a cottonmouth in its classic defense position, coiled up with its mouth open and its tail's twitching or whatever, it is absolutely terrified that you're going to hurt it. And that's what I see every time now I see a snake get defensive.
So it's a mindset shift.
Yep, it is. It's a mindset shift. And I probably, again, younger days, I don't remember thinking that, but I always was respectful, but I was never fearful.
Do they sense fear in us like animals can?
I'm not sure what all they can sense. I have the impression, they pick up a lot of the stuff that we don't. Lots of, they smell with their tongue. They have it's called a Jacobson's organ, I think, in the roof of their mouth. So when they stick out their tongue and they bring in scent particles, that's where it goes. And so they process all kinds of stuff. And I can't believe that they wouldn't be able to sense the different scents that you're putting off because you're fearful or you're anxious or whatever. I absolutely do believe that. And I think that, so like when I encounter a snake now, I don't catch it, but I usually try to speak to it. They don't have ears, but I'll put my hands on the ground and they might be able to feel the vibration. I don't know. And I'm always pretty calm around them. So, and what I've seen, again, this is not scientific. Most of the time their reaction is they're calm. They don't get excited. I'm not moving fast. I move slow, try to be and give them space. And so they chill out. Example, yesterday, I think is when I encountered the one rat snake eating the one egg. Then I think it was another rat snake on the other side of our yard that I saw that afternoon. And I walked right by it the first time. It was stretched out and in the open. But I walked by it and I don't know what caught my eye, but I happened to catch the tail of it and it wasn't moving. And I just stood there and it just moved off very slowly. And so Christine, my wife, saw me standing out there. She knew something was going on. So she comes out on the back porch, what's going on? I told her there's a snake. So she comes out and we both walk up on it a little quicker. Well, it immediately changed its body language. It tensed up.
When she got out there?
Yeah.
Oh.
It was my fault too. I was walking quicker trying to catch up to it so we could watch it. And it immediately turned around and looked toward us from a little bit further away than I thought it would notice us and watched us. And I said, okay, let's just not move. Let's just right here. And then it started, you can see it relaxing and it started walking and slithering off again to a brush pile.
So you think it was more the erratic versus calm?
Yeah. Erratic, calm.
Language.
Yeah. I don't think it could smell anything on us there, but it could tell by our body, how we were moving. In the wild, quick movements are associated with danger. It's either something trying to catch something or something trying to get away.
Yeah.
The default is slow.
So on that vein, we probably, when we're walking in our garden, we probably need to not only walk slow, but also be aware.
Yes.
Because if I accidentally see a snake, my first instinct is probably just to jump. And that's probably the worst thing for them.
But yeah, if you're walking fast and you walk up on one, then it's going to assume you're walking up on it to do harm.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the good takeaway. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, you mentioned earlier that even non-venomous snakes can get aggressive sometimes. Do they bite?
Yep.
Does the bite hurt?
I've never been bitten. From what I understand, they have small teeth. Like the rat snakes are particularly bitey. They're always ones that want to bite you pretty quick. It's like little needles. I've seen people get bit and, it might draw a little bit of blood. They're not.
Okay.
It's not like, so they're not equipped to deal with an animal our size. Their jaw muscles aren't strong enough. Their teeth aren't big enough. Even the ones that eat bigger prey like a rabbit or squirrel, the constrictors kill it by wrapping it up.
Right. Or
the venomous snakes inject it with venom and then let it wander off and die. They wait till they don't have to fight with it. So, the non-venomous ones that can bite, like I said, the rat snakes are little bitey. I guess I've seen all of them that I've caught act like they want or try to bite. But from what I've talked to other people, it doesn't hurt other than maybe a little needle prick.
Not that I want that, but I'm just, just curious.
Just in case.
It was just one of those things that I was like, nobody ever talks about the good snakes biting, and I just wasn't sure.
Yeah, they will. Anything, my granddaughter, she asked me that about snakes. We were talking about different snakes. And she asked me if they'll bite. And I've told her, I said, anything that has a mouth can bite. And if that's their only option, then they probably will.
Well, that brings me back to the next question I wanted to ask you, because you talked about how your grandfather helped you to understand snakes a little bit and really was formative in your view of them and other wildlife. Now you have grandkids. Did you say you have 4?
Mm-hmm.
How do you teach them about snakes? Because they're young.
Yep. I have a 10-year-old granddaughter, 7-year-old granddaughter, almost 5-year-old grandson. and the youngest grandson was born in December. So the two girls who are older, they've both held snakes. I've caught them, let them hold them king snakes, speckled king snakes, but there were, snakes that usually aren't, again, very defensive. Once they calm down your hands, the speckled king snakes and the prairie king snakes, they usually are cool and they'll slide through your fingers and it's not a big deal. And so I remember catching one pretty big speckled king snake when the two granddaughters were at our house, and they held it without a whole lot of apprehension.
What'd your daughter think about that?
Oh, she's cool with it. I mean, she held them when she was a kid. So
Okay.
yeah, they know. I mean, yeah, they knew I was like that, and they expected it. And I told her, well, this is what we're going to do with them. If I catch a snake, I'm going to try to show them how to hold it, not be scared of it. I'm just teaching them the same thing, probably with a lot more detail and a lot more understanding than my grandfather taught me. But it's like everything else, like foraging, we do some of that. You got to teach them about the mushrooms. You got to teach them about berries.
Yeah.
The rule is you don't eat anything unless we're there. And that's going to be the rule with the snakes. We already talked about that.
What I wanted to ask you next is something that hopefully nobody ever has to encounter, and hopefully you don't either. But what would your plan of action be if you did get bit?
Drive to a hospital.
Immediately?
Yep. From what I have read, again, no personal experience, and no, I've not ever been with anyone that has been bitten. But the best tool you can have for snake bite are your car keys. Try to remain calm. I don't remember. I knew these statistics a while back, but snake bite fatalities are extremely rare. It's gonna hurt. Best I've heard described was like a bee sting times 100 or 1,000. You hope it's on an extremity, and it's going to swell up. It's going to hurt, but the quicker you get to get medical attention, the better. Like I said, remain calm. Understand that it's probably just going to hurt. Mm-hmm. You're probably going to hurt for a while, but you're most likely not going to die. I think the last person I hate to quote something here, but I think the last person that died in Arkansas from a snake bite was like 1950 something.
Okay.
I may be wrong on that, but it's again, not very likely. Most bites, and again, speaking regionally, Arkansas are cottonmouth or copperheads. They're not a particularly huge snake. They don't inject as much venom as like a big timber rattler or something like that, or even a cottonmouth. My grandmother actually was bitten by a copperhead, and her arm swelled up, her hand swelled up. She was in the hospital for, I don't know, a few days. This was back in the 80s, early 80s. No lasting problems. Mm-hmm. That's what you can expect. But yeah, just get in your car or have somebody drive you, preferably to a hospital.
Well, hopefully nobody will need to hear that advice, but I thought it would be judicious of me to bring it up.
Yes.
Just in case. As we wrap up here, is there anything that you haven't said already that you would want the general public that doesn't really see your perspective on snakes to know?
I think if I could, again, impress upon people that they are just animals. That's it. There's nothing else. I think they're spectacular, but there's nothing more spectacular about them than there are any other animals. They're trying to survive. They're trying to reproduce. That's it. I look at the property we live on as shared space. Personally, for lots of reasons, I think that's a good attitude to have regarding all wildlife, as we take more and more of it. But especially if you're doing things that, enhance the habitat, that's part of it. You're going to have snakes. You may have other, unwelcome visitors, but I think that we need to find ways to coexist, again, with an understanding that, and this is a worldview I know a lot of people don't share, but I think this is important not only for the planet, but for people, is that we're all part of this world. We're all part of it. They have just as much right to be here, I think, as we do. They were here before we were. I don't know for how long. I've got the science on that, but they've been here a long time. They're fine-tuned to these environments. Respect that. That's it. You don't have to, there's nothing else. Just respect what they are, what they do, If you have one you don't want on your property, find somebody to come help. If you're not comfortable moving it, find someone to help you. There are people out there that will. That's what I hope people would take away from it.
And ultimately, as a gardener, they are beneficial.
They are.
So,
They're good. Like I say, if you're seeing snakes, that means things are good.
Yeah.
They can be very beneficial.
Now, I know that when I asked you to come on here to talk about snakes, I know you're passionate about that, but that's not the only thing you're passionate about. You have a wide variety of interests. What are you passionate about right now? What's exciting you? And if someone's interested in following along with you, where can they find you?
I write a lot about the connection between people and place and connections to land, and that entails relationships with other living beings, plants and animals. And I'm also really, I'm a product of rural culture, and I really like digging into rural culture, particularly Ozark and Appalachian, which Ozark is derivative of Appalachian culture, and exploring why we are the way we are, why we think the way we think, and sometimes offering counter views, kind of like I'm doing with the snakes,
Yeah.
For most of my family, they don't like snakes. And, my dad, a snake, he saw a snake, he was dead. And that's why it's so shocking about my grandfather. And this was my maternal grandfather that caught the snake. But again, looking back, it's crazy that he thought like that. But anyway, all of those things, and I think they're all intertwined because a lot of rural culture is entrenched in. I mean, it's so deeply tied to the place and to the wild things. So I write a lot about that, different aspects of that. And if you're interested in exploring some of my thoughts on that, you can find me on Substack, J. Carroll Sain on Substack. Yeah, and you'll never know what you'll find on there. It might be snakes. It might be, I wrote about a volunteer tomato plant a few years ago that outperformed the ones we were pampering in the garden.
There's so many lessons.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And it grew in a place that got like an hour worth of sun.
Really?
Yes. I don't know how
that.
it did it with ferns. It was in a fern. My wife, Christine, has a barrel outside of her little home office that has ferns in it. And I don't even know how how volunteers are. You know how they got there.
You need to save seeds from that one.
Yeah. If we didn't, we should have. But yeah, it didn't produce a lot of fruit, but it made it. It survived when blight was wrecking the ones in the garden. But anyway, you don't know what you'll find on there. I think I hunt and fish, so there's a lot of that on there, but probably not from the angle that you are accustomed to. Some spiritual stuff, which I like to explore, haven't really settled on, and you can't ever tell.
Well, we'll put your Substack address in the show notes, and I don't know if I've said this to you, but for those who are listening, you are one of the most brilliant writers I've ever read.
Oh my God, Jill, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Make me
so
blush.
anyone who's interested in nature and the perspective that you bring will be really interested in how you write and how you bring those things into writing.
Thank you so much.
I highly recommend people check that out. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Johnny as much as I did. I know it was a different topic, but it's one that is very relevant. And even as I was just walking out in my garden yesterday, I was walking, trying to identify some watermelon. And the way that I grew my watermelon this year, the melons are growing in big patches of grass. Not that most ideal thing in the world, but I remembered what Johnny said. I remember the things that he's taught me. I was stomping in my garden a little bit harder than normal, knowing that those vibrations will alert the snakes to my presence because I know they're out there. I just don't know where. And then as I tried to inspect the watermelon, I was real careful. I made a lot of noise in the grass. I was gentle. I wasn't abrupt because I was checking the tendril to see if they were ready. But all of that being said, his conversation with me really helped me to know what I was doing. It also gave me more of a peace of mind and a calmness of knowing what I was dealing with. I never did see a snake. Maybe they saw me first and they left. Like Johnny said, they probably would. But I felt less afraid and I felt more equipped to know what I was dealing with. So hopefully this episode did the same thing for you. And if you did enjoy this conversation, please share it with someone that you think might be interested. They might not even be a gardener, but they may be somebody that loves being outdoors, and this episode may be helpful for them. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I will chat with you again next week.